Join us for a special SDO Daily podcast where we talk about a multitude of things, which include LG C1 setting that up for cloud gaming, because a lot of people are getting those great sets right now. We're going to talk about a recent developer conference that was covered by our good friend John Scar that was really important. And lastly, did Stadia do this all wrong? We're hearing those sentiments being echoed. I definitely want to talk about that in a special, again, SDO Daily podcast. With no further ado, let's get into it. What's up, people? What's up, people? What's up, people? It is your boy MM2K back in the house. Been on a long hiatus. I kind of let you guys know what was going on. We're gonna get into it a little bit and what the near future of content coming from me is gonna look like. Don't fret, it's not gonna be anything bad. Just we got to switch some things up, but I definitely want to be able to provide content to everybody. So we got a game plan on how to do that. But again, we got some serious topics on board. We're going to be talking about the LG C1. We want to help you get that set up. We're going to talk about the developer conference. And then we're going to be talking about, again, the keynote of today's show. Did Stadia do it all wrong? But first and foremost, let's get into, let me see, so I want to check something real quick. Let's get into the prologue of the show, because I don't want to take too much time, doing all this other stuff, and I'm trying to keep notes too as I'm going along, so I can put a table up there, put bookmarks or whatever you call that crap up there. All right, so let me do this real quick. I'm keeping mark. You gotta bear with me. This is new for me. We're gonna say the prologue started at 2 minutes. Okay. All right. So I want to start off with just a few things to make sure that we get everything taken care of before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. First and foremost, you know how we do. Let me show you something. All right, hopefully that worked. And it did, y'all. It did. Okay, this is the latest article on PNTSnetwork.com. Week 3 details for the Winners Community Championship on Stadia. Again, this basically is a tournament, a great tournament, that in the weeks leading up to the tournament, the main tournament, people can play video games and earn cash prizes just by playing games on Stadia. You can't beat it. It's free 99 to play a lot of these games too, if not all of them, because even if you don't have Stadia right now, you can sign up for Stadia Pro, get the free subscription. You ain't got to keep it if you don't want it. Just give it a try. You know what I mean? But trust me, you'll be hooked once you try it. The week 3 challenge starts now. It reads, the winner takes $50 via PayPal, and second place gets $25. Participating also helps you qualify for the finals with a $400 first place prize. And it tells you how to participate, what you're going to be playing, all the other stuff. Come over to PNTSnetwork.com, look for the article, the week 3 challenge, and sign up here. Okay? All right, so don't forget about that. All right, so what's next on the radar? Well, here goes something new that I normally don't show people. But let me show you something else. If you're a Stadia gamer, you likely have Borderlands 3. Now, I know there was controversy from Randy Pitchford. Good old Duval Magic. Who is this calling me? So unprofessional. Who's this? Nobody special. Let me turn that off. Well, no, I can't turn it off because my wife is in the hospital right now, and I got to make sure that I get any of her calls. I'll get into that a little bit. But so unprofessional. But Mr. Duval Magic, Randy Pitchford, who's no longer over games, I don't think. I think he's more over the entertainment side. But again, he helped develop this game, part of Gearbox Studios, and he probably has a good knowledge as far as how his game was perceived and its activity on Stadia. We kind of talked about what he said in previous podcasts and previous shows, to where he's not a guru on all things Stadia. No client's going to be. Okay, it's not how things work in the Fortune 500 world. Just because you're a client or you're a partner, you have all the information there. You know what I mean? You may have a good portion. There was a Stadia related piece of news that hit big with Ubisoft, where Ubisoft was asked by their investors, well, we kind of heard this rumor that Stadia was shutting down gaming. What's your take on that? And I think Ubisoft gave an excellent response. They said, look, Stadia and other cloud platforms, man, this is just the tip of the iceberg. They're giving people a cost-efficient way to play games. That's what they're providing earlier on. And when they really get to their apex and they start producing cloud-native games, we're talking about a whole nother situation here. And they use the exact numbers. 50% of the cloud gaming, not cloud gaming, but of gaming altogether, gaming revenue, 50%. But that's not now. And if you go off analyst projections, there's no time soon. It's going to take some time for that to happen. The growth is happening rapid than normal entities within the gaming space when they're starting off. But we're still some time away from cloud gaming being on the mainstream. With that being said, even Ubisoft, a lot of people were mumbling and grumbling. Well, they didn't give them a clear indication. They didn't say yes or no. Well, they're not Google. You know what I'm saying? They can't speak on Google's behalf. It's not what happens in the Fortune 500 world. You can give words of confidence. If they weren't confident, I would have imagined a response like, well, we can't speak for Google, but we feel that other cloud platforms or cloud gaming as a whole has potential. And they would have kind of shied away from Google. They wouldn't have lumped Stadia into that whole repertoire about cloud gaming, especially about a question about Stadia. Okay, so they can't answer fully for Stadia. That's absurd and ridiculous. And again, I get where a lot of us are not used to, we don't know how this works. But before we start going too far off into the weeds, we got to understand that there are certain things that certain entities cannot do. With that being said, Randy Pitchford is not going to have everything in front of him for Stadia. But what we do have in front of us, I got into a whole rant. What we do have in front of us, excuse me, is we got codes that he sends out or Gearbox sends out every blue moon, and a lot of these codes sometimes will give you gold keys in Borderlands 3. If you're familiar with what gold keys are, gold keys allow you to unlock certain chests and get exotic weapons and stuff like that in Borderlands 3. So it's definitely something that you're interested, that would interest you if you picked up Borderlands 3. Great game, plays fantastic on Stadia. Definitely check it out and go. I got the code up here. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put it in the chat, even though there's not really much of a chat here, but I'll put it in the chat anyway. Borderlands 3 shift code. Put it in the chat. There it goes. All right. So hurry up and put that in before the 24th of February, and you'll get 3 extra gold keys. And as I come across these, I'll talk about these in podcasts. If you're trying to figure out where to go to put these in, you would go to shift.gearboxsoftware.com, go to the rewards tab, put in the code, click check. And then I think there's one more button you got to press. These are all the great codes. I got a plethora of them, and I haven't even used a quarter of them yet. So, all right, so there we go. That's how you'll do that. Okay. Next on the agenda is, let's take a look here. Next on the agenda is, I think that's it. That is it for everything that's happening in the prologue. That was a 17-minute prologue. So we're going to get right to, we're out of the prologue. Now we're going to go straight to our first topic, which is the LG C1, right? If you got an LG C1, you'll definitely want to listen to this because it's a great TV, but a lot of people are having issues with playing their cloud gaming platform on it, including Stadia. LG C1. We're gonna say that was 10 minutes going in. Okay, so maybe I wasn't. So we'll say 10 minutes going in for the LG C1. All right, now, so let me tell you guys my experience with this thing. I had several monitors, and I've had a 4K monitor for a while. And I said to myself, because I'm over 1440p. I'm over 1440p as a native output. That's different from me wanting 1440p Stadia dynamically upscaled games. That's different. But as 1440p is a maximum threshold for the output resolution from my monitor, I'm done with it. I got two 1440p. One's 165 hertz, another one is 144 hertz monitors. One is G-Sync, one is G-Sync compliant. And I remember getting my FreeSync one, which is a pretty cool curved MSI one. Actually, it's the Optics Mag 27CQ. I remember getting that one, and then I said, let me hook that up to my Xbox and my PlayStation, because there's now that FreeSync capability that's out there, and it's going to make my game smoother. And lo and behold, now I think with the FreeSync, it was allowing me to get up to 100 frames per second or something like that. So I was on the Xbox One, I'm playing, I was able to have my 144 hertz mode running, but the game was playing at 60 frames per second, I think it was at the time. And you can still notice a difference. Having a better refresh rate on your monitor still helps. Even if the device that you're working with really doesn't match 1v1 with it, it still helps. It was such a better experience. I loved it, but I was missing my 4K output. I was missing it. And I've discovered that when it comes to output from a monitor, I'd rather have 4K than 1440p at 100 something hertz. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather, not 30. I could do with 4K 60 opposed to 1440p 200. To me, I've gotten so spoiled. I've gotten used to the resolution, the sharper image, and I've gotten used to the color. And the lower that you go as far as the resolution is concerned, and depending upon the hertz that you select, will determine something called the color gambit that your NVIDIA card produces. I'm not sure how AMD GPUs work, but if you go into your NVIDIA settings on a computer, you can go to set the resolution, and in there'll be like the different lists of resolutions that you can set it to, and to the right there'll be the hertz that you'll want to pick, and it'll give you a list of options depending upon what your monitor can do. Then below that is like the color mechanism. Are you going to go into full or limited mode or 8-bit color? Or in my case that I was used to with my first 4K monitor, it was a 10-bit color. Got addicted to 10-bit color, and I refused to do anything less than 10-bit color 4K 60 threshold, because here's what ended up happening. I said, I want to take it a step further. I said, now I want HDR. You know how, you got something good and you're like, you know what? But I want more. So I said, now I want HDR. Because the monitor didn't have HDR. So I went and bought a monitor that I had for, it was an Acer Predator. I can't remember the actual name of it. But it was a pretty good monitor. It had great darks, great colors and stuff like that. The only problem was that the HDR on it was iffy, was shoddy. It was HDR 10, but it was HDR 10 compliant, but 400. And HDR 400 just isn't it. They tell you that at least if you want good acting HDR, you want HDR 600 at the least. Preferably you want HDR 10,000 or 1,000. But if you got 600, 800, I don't recall ever seeing an HDR 800 monitor. But if you got HDR 600, 800, or 1,000, you cool. Anything below 600 is going to be spotty. And yes, when I got the HDR 400, it was iffy. You know what I mean? Some things it would work with, other things it didn't work with. And it just, and then when I turned the HDR off of the monitor, everything was washed, so if you didn't have HDR on, because, maybe with the HDR on, it was just too much, like on the VRAM and stuff like that, and things like that. If you were playing a game natively on your PC, you wanted to turn it off, it was washed. So I said, this is not what I was looking for. So I went out, and I discovered that everybody was telling me to get OLED. Because I was looking around and I was looking at different options, and I saw some monitors that I said, okay, these are the ones that I think I can get with. Let's do these monitors. But they were all like $800, $900, $1,000. I'm like, damn. Like, if I'm going to pay $800, $900 for a monitor, I want full HDR. And none of the monitors had HDR 1000 on them. They're like 600 at best. Don't get me wrong. These, one monitor was 165 hertz, and you know what I mean? But again, in playing around with these different monitors and better understanding how the color gambit was affected by whatever hertz you picked, I didn't care so much about getting anything beyond 4K 60. As long as I got to go 60 frames per second, I was happy. And I looked at it and I said, well, I really like the size. I like gaming on a monitor. Like, I really don't like anything over 40 inches as far as gaming. Right. I can deal with 40 inches at the most. I don't like anything real big when it comes to gaming, but I couldn't find a 37, like preferably I like a 37. I couldn't find a 37-inch monitor that had good HDR, you know what I'm saying? Unless it was like $1,000. And I said, if I'm going to spend $1,000, I might as well try out this OLED thing, because everybody's telling me that OLED is the way to go. So I'm looking, and I find out that the LG C1 is now $1,000. It's like $700 off. I'm like, what? Anywhere between $400 to $700 off, or even more, depending upon what size you got. I think mine was more like $400 or $500 off. I said, what? Okay. I said, let me get this one. But then the problem was, the smallest I could get was 48 inches. I'm like, damn. Then I saw the TCL 6 series. And I'm getting a lot of good information about the TCL 6 series. Even when you look at the LG C1 versus the TCL 6 series on ratings.com, Excuse me. The TCL 6 series is not far off in ranking. Got some good marks. And it was like $300 less. But the thing that stopped me, and thank goodness, and I'll get into the thank goodness in a second. The thing that stopped me was the TCL 6 series was the lowest it was at was 55 inches. That's too big. That's too big. So I said, well, damn it. I'll go with the more expensive LG C1. And I'm glad I did. But at first, when I brought it home, I wasn't happy. Now, why was I glad that I got this over to TCL? And it's not because the TCL was cheap and all that. You hear that stuff. And I guess some people, it makes them feel good to blow money and spend money that makes them feel special. No, I don't play those games. I'm a saver. I have money. Don't get me wrong. I have money. I mean, when I was a kid and I was younger and I didn't understand the importance of building equity and building it towards something that maybe your kids can benefit from, your responsible ones. You know what I'm saying? And just making sure that you just got money sitting in case of emergencies, or like how me and my wife wanted to do. We wanted to buy a house. So we put a lot of money down. We put like 4-5 times the amount down that you need to put in order, you know, for a down deposit. You know what I'm saying? And now our payments are like butter. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Some people, it makes them feel special to do that, and then they blow money, and then you're never guaranteed to have that money in the future. Anything can happen and you can lose that money. I'm still living off of money that I put away years ago. Like the money that I get now goes in the bank. I'm living off of money that I made years ago. That's the way it should work. Because you never, if this pandemic showed you anything, it shows you that nothing's guaranteed. Now, some people may say, M2K, you're trying to showboat. It's not easy. You got to live paycheck to paycheck. I've been there. I've lived paycheck to paycheck. But while I was in the paycheck to paycheck situation, I said, oh no, oh no, oh no. Like there's got to be something else. One of the first things I said, there's got to be something else that I can do in order to make money. And one of the first things that I did is when my brother showed me how to do computers, I started building computers on the side. Even one of my hustles on the side was fixing Xbox 360s. Like there was always money being generated somewhere. And my plan has always been, and I feel the most comfortable when I'm not spending the money that I got now. I can tuck that away for an emergency or something. I'm spending money that I made a little bit of time ago. And I'm slicing that out. And when I say I can't buy something, it's not necessarily because the money isn't there. I can't buy it because I have trained myself with the help of my wife. She's really got on me about this. But we've trained ourselves to where we stick by our budget. We have a budget. Because you never know. That's why people may think I'm being arrogant and bringing this up. Hell no. All of it, our blessings are not guaranteed. We could wake up tomorrow and not have the abilities that we have. So because of that, I don't fall into that crap of, oh, you gotta pay for a name because that's what's in style. There is nothing wrong, usually, with TCL TVs. TCL TVs are a great, fantastic value. You talk to a lot of people that rate TVs that have money themselves or that get these TVs for free. They will tell you TCLs are normally a great TV. But the TCL series the ones that were being sold in Best Buy had to take them back because there was some type of bug with the software. Now it's been resolved. Now they say you can go out and get them. But those TVs, the TV, when I was looking at the display, was great. And the TCL TVs, they're nothing but Samsung displays. They're Samsung displays that are sold to TCL. What TCL used to do is they used to make projector monitors, and then they got into the TV business, so they buy their panels off of Samsung. That's where that name brand, and you know what I'm saying. Please, it's all a scam under the day. If Samsung sells the panel, it's $90,000, but if TCL sells it, it's $500. I'm gonna get it from TCL. Okay, so you can't go wrong there, but normally you can't go wrong there, but I did run into a situation to where the model that I wanted was the software was bugged. So and I have no tolerance for stuff like that, so I'm glad I got the LG C1. All right, so now that I've gone past all of the let me see, we'll say LG C1 My Experience. I got to put another one in here. My Experience. Oh God. Okay. And then we're going to do LG C1 info. Oh no, I'm really not done with My Experience yet. Info. This is all new to me, so you gotta bear with me. All right. So here's what happened, y'all. Let me show you something. Okay, so oh no, where's the tweet? There we go. All right. So when I brought it home and I set it up and I was playing with it and I'm looking at it and trying different things, it was great. Then I tried to play one of the things that I did is I hooked it up as a monitor. And there's certain things you got to do that, and I'm gonna show you that real quick. But then, as I went to go hook it up as a monitor, certain options were grayed out, and I was having issues with color contrast and stuff like that. And even though ratings.com is normally great at helping you understand the stuff, I really didn't feel like they were a great help, right? So for what I was specifically looking to do, because I ran into an issue with Stadia on here. When I first booted up Stadia, I noticed some weird things happening. It was like the signal from my computer to the monitor, like something was messing with the transference of the signal. I always test everything with Division 2. Division 2 is one of the best looking games, if arguably not the best looking game on, if not arguably the best looking game on Stadia. So a great indicator is if I can get sharpness looking good. If this is supposed to be a great panel, then the sharpness should be good, the color should be popping, you know what I'm saying? Even the draw distances on Stadia, they should be fairly okay, you know what I'm saying? So I tried booting it up on Stadia and it looked like a bowl of oatmeal, and I really started getting concerned, and I was really playing with it, and for days I couldn't get it to work. Finally, what did I do? I did something. I got the native app booted, and even though the native app wasn't hardwired, my router's about like 3 feet away from the TV. It's still always better though to use it wired, because the thing is, and many of you may not know this, when you're using Wi-Fi, like Wi-Fi is more like for travel devices, like a phone, a tablet, you know what I'm saying? Maybe a laptop. If you're just typing and you're just surfing the net on it. But if you're doing some resource heavy stuff as far as the internet is concerned, you want to be wired. Why? Because Wi-Fi signals are shared. So all of the devices get essentially one pie, and depending upon how many devices are connected to that Wi-Fi, the pie gets split into those many pieces. So if you have 3 devices connected to the Wi-Fi, then you take a whole pie and you cut it up into 3 parts. But if you got 10 devices connected to the Wi-Fi, again, you're still sharing that same Wi-Fi. So now that bandwidth is being cut into 10 different slices. When it comes to wired connections, it's only 1 pie per wired port. That's why wired, until the year 3035 maybe, will always be better when you're using internet intensive stuff. If you're talking about multiple devices. If you're using internet intensive stuff and you have multiple devices, it's best to put the intensive stuff in a wired setting. Your travel devices like a phone, a tablet or whatever, okay. But just understand that, again, the more devices you connect to the wireless portion, to your Wi-Fi, the more sharing it's going to have to do. But with that said, the only things that I had connected to the Wi-Fi at the time was my Amazon tablet that I kind of use as a soundboard here. It helps me do this. See, when I do that, I'm using my Amazon tablet to do that. And my printer and the TV. So there was just those three devices. All right. And when I was playing, the stream was a lot better. Was it perfect? Was it giving me that crisp that I'm normally used to? But no, but it wasn't as bad as it was. So I settled for that. I said, okay, at least now I got it looking where I'm satisfied with it via Wi-Fi. So I imagine that when I put my wired, when I connect it wired, it's going to look even better. So I said, okay, I'm done. And then I started working with the native PC games, and then I started realizing it was giving me trouble there. And I'm like, hold on, I just played this game 2 days before on this monitor. The VRAM was fine, but now I'm playing it on this monitor and the VRAM's a problem. And I said, oh, okay, that's because I got the HDR active. I turned the HDR and then it's still not. So I was like, what the hell is going on? Because I followed everything that ratings.com told me that I should do. And I said, I must be going crazy, or maybe I just lucked out and I didn't get a good panel. Until I saw this. Shout out to Gamer TV on Twitter. I respond and say, this is a very helpful thread for those experiencing blurriness with cloud gaming, including Stadia via LG C1. All right. So, and I say top suggestions, tone mapping, turn that off, or to MGIG, particularly if you're on a Chromecast Ultra or some type of dongle. Like turn tone mapping off. From what I understand from tone mapping is this could be wrong. Tone mapping is a way to try to get the color and the saturation and the output correct, right? But what it does in order to do that, and this could be wrong, this is my understanding of it. It's communicating with your device. See, normally your TV tries to figure that out on its own, and it's doing that with the HDR. And sometimes it may have issues with it. This is where you get like little mixed up things happening, because sometimes the HDR, you might be on an HDR screen, or the thumbnails might be in HDR, but then you go to another portion, it's an SDR, and it kind of trips up your TV, and you might have some funky things going on as far visually or whatever. Well, what tone mapping does is tone mapping communicates, HDR tone mapping at that, communicates with the device instead of your TV trying to figure it out on its own, and it gets told on how to handle those different variations, right? Here's the problem. Unless it's certain devices that do tone mapping well without really messing up your TV, tone mapping can be more of a deterrent and more of a bottleneck than it can be of an assistance. Like, for instance, if I hook up, a gaming device, particularly an Xbox, because Xbox or a PlayStation, because Xbox, Sony, Nvidia, and some other groups, they're like the heads of this think tank that is working on tone mapping. Now, Google and other entities, entered the fray after the fact, but the big dogs in this whole effort is Xbox, or Microsoft, and Sony, and then some other places. So if you have a console, okay, turn tone mapping on, because those devices are going to be the best suited for tone mapping. However, if you're playing on a dongle, then you're going to want to turn tone mapping to MGIG. I don't know what MGIG means. It's an option that's more or less for dongles, and it's a good way for there to be communication with the dongle in your TV. However, if you're on a computer that's just open source, whatever, and really tone mapping isn't the best for it, even for native play, your best bet is to turn it off. Or what I'm noticing in my case, turn it to MGIG. MGIG seems to provide no bottleneck, and it provides just a little bit enhancement to where everything isn't so dark, particularly for the LG C1. But that's the biggest thing that you could do, because what happens is when you try to play your game through the PC via a web browser, that web browser, like you're trying to play something like Stadia, that web browser via tone mapping is not going to communicate right with that device. It's just going to cause a bottleneck. And that's why there was so much distortion, all this other stuff, and blurriness that I was dealing with. So I turned that off, and that made the biggest impact. Also with the LG C1, the LG C1 has such great sharpness that you ain't gotta turn it up. You can leave it at 0, because bringing up the sharpness even more can distort lines. I noticed that edges look jagged and stuff like that, and you don't even need to turn the sharpness up. There's AI and stuff in here included, even in PC mode, where the AI is not necessarily on, but there's just the way the TV works, even in PC mode or with the AI on. If you're in a regular TV mode, you don't need to raise the sharpness up at all. And if not in PC mode, shout out to Gamer TV for suggesting this, you're going to want to utilize super resolution. Super resolution is the AI mode, and I noticed with the super resolution mode, oh my God, the textures, you know what I'm saying? Like, it looked good. It was some of the best texturing that I saw on natively on the Stadia app at all, period. It kind of reminded me, and this is what what's it called does well. It kind of reminded me of how smooth the textures and stuff, and how clear the textures on things, on images, on the new 3080 tier look. Because definitely they get a thumbs up. They get 5 out of 5 for how they do that. But here's the problem for me, and it may not be a problem for others. But the problem for me is I'd rather keep it in PC mode, because it gives you the Chroma 444, which if you research it, the Chroma 444 does better handling the color, because the other Chroma modes like kind of compress things a little bit more, whatever. It's a lot of complicated babble. But at the end result is you get a better color saturation out of Chroma 444. So what I noticed is that even though the textures look better, it kind of reminded me of the 3080 tier playing on my monitor, because the thing that I'm not the fondest of with the 3080 tier is that I don't have that color. And the colors seem a little bit more washed. So I'm getting better textures, but I'm getting less vivid colors. And I want my vivid colors. You know what I'm saying? Like, one of the things that I'm doing on this TV, which just blows my mind and I love it, is I was so hooked on 10-bit color gambit. This puppy has 12-bit color gambit. It allows you to have 12-bit color gambit. You know what I mean? And the beautiful thing about it too is, if I were to switch to like 120 hertz, like on my other 4K monitors, I can't go higher than 8-bit on them. At least here, I can still use 10-bit. So it's a great thing. And then you got the game mode that gives you the deep black. It's just crazy. So I'm gonna go over all that like now, and I want to show you guys how well this works. So let's do this. So right now, that because I've talked about my experience for a while, and now, holy Jesus Christ, talked about that for a long time. We're gonna say in 49 minutes, we are now going to talk about how you get these great results on your LG C1 if you're cloud gaming. Okay, so let's go here. So this is ratings.com, and this is like literally normally the best place and really the one-stop shop that you need. If you want to get a rating on a TV, or if you want to get like on monitors and stuff like that, if you want to get what's that, calibration settings and stuff like that, you can download and upload to your PC color management settings, this is the best place to go. So whenever I'm looking at TVs and I'm trying to make a decision, I go to ratings.com. They're the best. So they give you things to do in order to enhance the TV. But what you always want to do is you want to look at, okay, what is my main use for this tube? And therefore you go to gaming. Now, my recommendation is the beauty of the LG C1 is that it has about 4 HDMI ports. I wish it would have a display port, but that's okay. I guess they don't put them on TVs anymore. If it had a display port, then most of my problems would go away. With that being said, it has 4 HDMI ports. And with the 4 HDMI ports, you can set things to a certain way. So like you have a dedicated HDMI port for the PC, like how I'm using it. I can set it up and have another HDMI port dedicated to my PlayStation 5. I can have another one dedicated to, just watching movies on, via a Fire Stick or something like that, or Google TV, and so forth and so forth, right? But my suggestion is tackle and assign the HDMI port that you're most likely to use. So because we're gamers, we're going to be talking about gaming. So most of my gaming is going to be done via the PC, whether it's Stadia or natively. So I followed these gaming settings, right? And for the most part, when you follow the settings, like they show you how to do the game optimizer, which is a must. They show you how to the different modes for the HDR and stuff like that, right? And all that great stuff. That's fine. However, if you're using this as a PC monitor, you gotta pay close attention to this. And you have to follow the stuff that's here. So you gotta do the PC gaming settings, which you wanna set it to PC, and they tell you how to do that. But what they don't tell you is, again, how to turn off your, they don't tell you how to turn off your, I can't believe I just lost it right here. Let's go back to the tweet. Tone mapping. In order for you to turn off your tone mapping, you have to go, see here, I don't know if you can see this, see where I'm at here. You want to go here to this cube. Let me see if I can make this bigger. And I can. So I'm hovering over this cube right here when you go to your menu, and that's your display cube. You go to display, and once you go under display, there's something called brightness. Under your brightness menu, you go to tone mapping. And you turn, I was just trying to see if there was a demo for that, but there's not. But you turn tone mapping off again. It said, let me see if there's, no. All right, so again, you got to hit this cube right here. It's going to give you, and then you, well, I'm sorry, when you hit the cube, there's going to be two options up top, and then there's going to be a third one at the bottom that says advanced settings. You're going to go to advanced settings, then you're going to go to brightness. You're going to scroll down to tone mapping, and you're going to make sure that tone mapping is off, okay? Next thing you're going to want to do, make sure your sharpness is 0. In order to make sure your sharpness is 0, you do the exact same thing. You click this thing right here, which is your all settings. You scroll down to the bottom option, which is going to say advanced settings. You click on that, and then you go to something called clarity. Under clarity, you look for sharpness and you make sure it's 0. Okay. Another thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that super resolution mode is on if you're using game mode. I suggest if you're using it as a PC, use PC mode, but if for whatever reason you want to try those better looking textures through the AI mechanism, which they do look good, then you put it in game mode. And what you're going to have to do is go again to the square, go to all settings or advanced settings. You're going to go to clarity again, and the option for super resolution should be available, and you can set it to low, medium, high. I set it to high, but you can play around with it and see what the best one is for you. All right. Next is PC mode. They show you how to do it here. In order to get to PC mode, what you have to do on your remote or on your TV is you got to hit the input mode. When you hit the input mode, there'll be a bunch of things that pop up like little thumbnails. You're going to want to hit dashboard after you hit the input button. Dashboard brings you here to this screen that I'm circling over. You make sure that the port or the HDMI port that you want to put in PC mode to get that Chroma 444 that you have, there's a green check mark on that. And what you do is there's 3 buttons over it. You can't see them right now because they got this high, but there's 3 buttons to the side. You click the 3 buttons, and these are the 2 options you're going to get. Edit input and edit home. So you just hit edit input. When you hit edit input, it's going to bring you here. It's going to show you all of your HDMI ports. Again, you select the HDMI port that you're dealing with. You can give it a name. But what you got to do is over here on this side, where it got the pictures of the HDMI port, that's a button. So you hit the appropriate button to the HDMI port that you're editing, and this will pop up. Now it pops up, you go to PC mode, and you click on PC. Then one of these buttons behind it says save, and voila, there you go. Once you save, then you can play around with the other options, but definitely get it in PC mode. And my suggestions for brightness, to get like 200 nits, the brightness is you're going to want it to be at 100. and you're going to want contrast to be like 85. I boosted up to 87, but to get that perfect 200 nits that they talk about, you're going to want contrast to be 85. That, my friends, will ensure that not only will your native gameplay work well, like from a computer or whatever, but it'll also make sure that when you're playing via the cloud on a web browser, I would imagine even a native app on the cloud, because it's going through the internet, there is no bottleneck, there is no interference. It all goes right to your screen, nice and smooth. Okay. Another thing that I'm going to suggest too is when you're in game optimizer mode, they tell you how to get in the game optimizer mode. You're going to want to make sure that G-Sync is on, VRR is on, as long as your video card and your, can support it. You got to check and make sure you got the right HDMI cable for that, because only HDMI 2.1 cables support VRR. So make sure that's on. And I would suggest this, even if you have a NVIDIA card, they say that there's something under G-Sync and VRR. It's AMD FreeSync. Turn that on too. I've noticed that when I'm playing cloud games, not necessarily with other games, not native games, when I'm playing cloud games, even though I have a NVIDIA Geforce monitor, for some reason that AMD FreeSync option gives me better output as well. Makes it takes away from that blurriness, and it's a smoother looking picture as well. You definitely want that AMD FreeSync mode on if you're playing via a console, because those are the type of chips that are in the console. Okay. All right. So that is it for my experience with the LG C1, my experience and the info. Okay, so hopefully you guys appreciate it. Next, let's talk about the developer conference. And I want to say that we talked about the dev conference going into 1 hour 20 seconds. Okay, developer conference that was held last week. Shout out to the homie John Scar, who got wind of this conference happening, let everybody know, and he was live streaming it. This was a hell of a conference. Let me show you. If you look for John Scar on YouTube, this is his fantastic channel. So if you're interested in Stadia, or you're a Stadia nut like myself, you got to be subscribed here. And what you're going to want to do is check out these two videos. Number one, the leaning into the cloud native with Ryan. And let me hover over that. Make sure I get his name right. With Ryan Bartley. And then there's the game testing strategies and testability. Well, Ryan Bartley is part of Google Stadia. He's a product manager, I believe. And he also has a lot of technical expertise and stuff like that. So he works to make sure that enhancements go through and all that other stuff. And he sat on this this panel that was all about cloud gaming, right? And they not only talked about Stadia, but they talked about other platforms. And they were just going over their experiences on enhancing cloud gaming. This was very informative. And I'm going to explain to you why. So again, make sure you check out Four Scars Gaming and you subscribe to that channel. When you listen, because this was interesting, because this comes on the heels of a Business Insider article that claimed that that Stadia had deprioritized. Google had deprioritized Stadia, and the actual figure that they floated around in the article was a laughable 80-20 scale, like 80% white labeling, 20% Stadia retail. Now, if anybody knows the lineage and the history of gaming and platforms that maybe were trying to do better, even just recently, maybe not so much long ago, but recently, they'll understand the tale of Microsoft. And I get a lot of people that are in cloud gaming right now as far as content consumption. A lot of you guys were disenfranchised from gaming, so a lot of this stuff flew over your head. You didn't know what was going on. I've been in tune to the nooks and crannies of gaming since the OG Xbox. I mean, I've been a gamer since day one, and I got my Nintendo powers and all that other stuff, but I wasn't really in depth until I got my OG Xbox. And the OG Xbox blew me away. But one of the things that confused me was why wasn't it certain features and special things that it had going on, particularly System Link, how come it wasn't being more broadly utilized? And like Stadia, I didn't realize that even though we have the developers, the nerds, they're being controlled by the publishers. And the publishers ain't doing this for the art. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're doing this for the money. They're not going to take one for the team. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to make like a long-term investment into something for the greater good. You have a lot of public investment money that's now been infused into gaming. So now it's about the money. If it's not making money, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So what I discovered quickly is that even though Xbox's System Link was a game changer, and if more games would have implemented it, it had the power to, I'm not going to say reverse. Hell no. Because you got to have the games. But it had the power to shift a lot more consoles. You probably would have had maybe 10 or 20 million more consoles shift over to Xbox. Which, who doesn't want 10 or 20 million more consoles? Because what it allowed you to do is, I bring my Xbox over to your house and we ain't got to play on the same screen. And that's the era of when people were really making heavy investments into gaming like it was nothing. Like they didn't care. Like we were going into a financial recess, but gamers didn't care. You know, gamers were willing to drop that cash for that. You know what I'm saying? They were willing to do it. So when Stadia has features like how OG Xbox did, I am not surprised that they're not being utilized as much as they can, even though Stadia is making a push to change that ongoing. But it doesn't surprise me because it's the same thing with System Link. You know, Stadia is not a market mover at the moment. So why, unless you give me a whole bunch of gazillion dollars, which Stadia doesn't have an appetite to do long term every time they want to introduce something, because they're not a cost, you know, they're not a revenue bringing source yet. So because of that, you're going to see a lot of games bypass the features at first, and that's all going to change, right? But for those that understand the lineage of what was going on with Xbox beyond just features and stuff like that, they understand that Stadia did not make up what it's doing now. What it tried to do at launch, we're going to talk about that later. We can break down and dissect or whatever and say, that was questionable. But what they're doing now is they're mimicking a successful path. Who paved that successful path? Microsoft. And it just shows you how, and people probably listen to that, no, Microsoft is buying studios, they're going to buy Activision Blizzard. Excuse me. That didn't just happen out of nowhere. From 2013, damn well to 2019. I don't want to say that. No, that's a little bit too long. I want to say 2013 to 2014 is when Donnie D was still partially around. But what I will say is from the latter half of 2014 to 2019, 4.5 years. Microsoft didn't really produce any new IP or do anything really substantial on a gaming scope competitively as far as new titles were concerned. None of their games were critically acclaimed. A lot of people were looking at their content and they were like, meh, this is meh at best. And their gamers were starting a civil war because what happened in 2018, I believe, is Crackdown was released. And when Crackdown was released in its crappy state, in the eyes of many gamers, they were like, no, this is not what we were looking for. Like, this is trash. And it started a mini civil war. I reported on my MM2K channel. Definitely check out MM2K videos on YouTube. But what did they do? Even though they had nothing to output then, they were making money. They were making money. They made strategic investments and purchases that would quietly change the landscape of the influence that Microsoft would have. How did they do that? Their main focus, instead of putting out a singular game here or a singular game there, was they took those 4.5 years and they bought and created through various investments things like PlayFab, things like Havoc, getting the Havoc engine. And dare I even argue Minecraft, because Minecraft is so big that it's beyond just a game. It's a platform within itself. It's in schools and libraries and things like that. Like, Minecraft is its own platform. It kind of puts you in the mind of a Roblox. Well, really, Minecraft could if Microsoft really wanted it to, it'd be crazy. Minecraft could go public, be its own public entity as well, go public. They probably couldn't do that, but still. Couldn't do that legally, but still, because they're already owned by Microsoft. But the point that I'm getting at is that Minecraft is its own thing as well. And they continue to white label that, put that out on different platforms. Like, for instance, I think the PlayStation version, or this might have changed, but the PlayStation version isn't the out-of-package version, because the PlayStation version doesn't want to be cross-platform with the Xbox version. Because in order for it to do that, you would have to have an Xbox Live sign-in. And PlayStation is not going to do anything to increase its competitor sign-in. No, hell no. So, but again, They still ported the game over, or they ported the experience over. You can argue that they white labeled it, made a specific PlayStation version, even if it's just a slight modification of crossplay. And that's what they're doing. They created revenue streams that took the resources that they own and put them elsewhere to generate revenue. And it's for when you look at things like Havoc and PlayFab, it kind of reminds me of some of the out of touch things that we're hearing with Stadia. Hold on, Stadia white labeled to AT&T the Batman game. How come the Batman game isn't here already? They white labeled the service, meaning the purpose isn't bringing that actual entity over to its own retail version. It's to create a revenue stream that can support the retail version. It'd be great if it come over, but that's like as saying, well, Sony developed the game on using PlayFab technology, so it's got to be coming to Microsoft, right? No! Just because something has the Havoc engine, if it's a PlayStation or a Nintendo Switch exclusive, or a PlayStation exclusive, it's a PlayStation exclusive. They're just licensing Microsoft's technology. Same applies here, but in the long term, that helps Microsoft to do what? Maybe not get that one game, but sign checks to buy publications that make a bunch of games. Aha! Now it makes sense, right? So it kind of reminds me of the out of touch conversations that we're having now. But the things that I wanted to cover in regards to this conference is that when we talked to, why is his name losing me? When Ryan talked during that conference, or during his Q&A, rather, there was two parts. It was the panel and then the Q&A. But while he was talking during the Q&A, that's where I'm going to pull most of this from. A lot of the tenses, past, present, future, they were talking about current tense as far as referencing solving the cloud problem. That's a quote, solving the cloud problem. And he was talking about that as it relates to output matching daddy devices. So again, Stadia knows that they have an experience that they're onto something, but it quite not is yet ready for prime time. So never in their wildest dream, they're even talking current tense now about solving, quote unquote, the cloud gaming problem. You know what I mean? So, and what you're talking about when solving the cloud, now a lot of people may hear that and may say, well, GFN, here's the thing with GFN. GFN is way more costly, significantly more costly than the average gaming experience when you factor in having to upgrade your internet. If you're just running with basic services, especially in the US, that's not cheap. And having to buy a device, if you want that 4K, you can't just use any device. You got to use a specific device in order to get that to work a certain way. Or if you want to use this AI upscaling through the PC, the native PC, you got to have a certain video card. And 59% of the video cards that are owned by at least Steam gaming PCs wouldn't qualify for the GFN AI upscaling. And that's with gamers. Those are just taking percentages from gaming rigs. When you look at PCs over the world, if it's 51% or 59%, I'm saying rather, of Steam PCs that wouldn't be compliant with being able to take advantage of GFN's upscaling, You can imagine globally, the percentage is bigger. So even though GFN gives you capabilities as far as latency and other things that you're like, oh, okay, you could argue this is on par with Daddy devices in this area and that area and that area. Look at all the things you got to piecemeal in order to get it. It's not as simple as a stream from a server to any device. That's the cloud gaming problem. We don't want the overall price tag, because I estimated anywhere between $6, depending upon if you're in the States or whatever. If you're a console gamer and you want to switch to GFN's 3080 tier and you want to get results that are, have a small gap between what you're getting with the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox, you're talking about an extra $800 to $600. If you're in the States, particularly because of the extra internet that you would have to pay for. Then you have to pay $200 a year for GFN itself. Everybody doesn't have Xbox Live. There's what, 120 million PlayStation accounts, and half aren't on PlayStation Plus. Everybody's not paying to get online. Everybody is not paying to get online. In order for you to play GFN 3080 tier, you have to submit that $200 a year. A year before a single game is bought. GFN's 3080 tier is a great way to show you that even in these early years, what cloud gaming is capable of, but they have not solved the cloud gaming problem. The cloud gaming problem just isn't simply shrinking the gap. It's completely closing the gap and doing it in a seamless, frictionless, cost-efficient manner. Whatever the business model is, I pay a feasible price that across the board, just not to some tech enthusiasts that just want to try everything, but to people who feasibly are looking for something that presents them a better trade-off. Well, I don't necessarily want to say trade. When it comes to improvements in technology, people don't necessarily want a trade-off that's going to have you paying more money. I'll just stick with the hardware. Yeah, I may not be able to play on the go, or my play on the go may not be as great because the console isn't too focused on cloud gaming or out of network gaming. Because we got to keep it real. There's a difference between cloud gaming and out of network gaming. Like, cloud gaming is gaming that's done by specific servers that have specific capabilities to a broad reach of gamers. If you're streaming your game from your console, which has, people have been doing this for years, jerry-rigging certain things and trying different things, and I've done it. That's not cloud gaming. That's out of network gaming. I'm out of my Wi-Fi network and I'm pinging my display through remote whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's not through the cloud. That's just doing it remotely via the internet. The cloud is when you're dealing with specific servers that are looking to reach specific gamers or users in multiple locations from server racks. So what somebody like PlayStation is implementing with you being able to play your PlayStation 5 games is, the remote play. And I think you can do it out of network now. I can't remember. But again, when we're talking about solving the cloud problem, cloud gaming right now, which is a niche business because the majority of gamers don't either know about it or they don't trust it. Cloud game. Let me show you guys something. Here, let me do this. I want to show you guys something. Because a lot of people I'm gonna move this over here. So I want to show you guys just one thing. Because I don't think you guys understand the severity of what's going on here as far as the need for patience when it comes to this cloud native thing. Or not cloud native, cloud gaming thing. Okay, so D6 survey. What keeps gamers from cloud gaming and how to make it more attractive? So a big think tank, a world-leading think tank when it comes to the use of technological advancement in products and services, whatever. They're called D6. They survey stuff like this. They talked about cloud gaming, and this was research done by Dr. Thomas King, Chief Technology Officer at D6, right? They break down the read the press release. Okay, download the press release. I don't think this, but I got the results, even if this isn't the right actual article. Okay, here it goes. Yeah, this is it right here. Okay. So let me do this for you. Okay, so this is what keeps gamers from cloud gaming and how to make it more attractive. And then they talk about Stadia. They talk about the different platforms that are and so forth. But here are the numbers when it comes to cloud gaming. The most significant numbers. Okay. 28% of the people that were polled just didn't find it attractive. They just don't care about cloud gaming and what the quote unquote stated benefits are. Another 23%, they like what they're hearing that it could do. They just don't trust that it can do it. Right? They're not willing to increase their internet and make these investments in it only to find out that their inclinations were right. They just don't trust it. And other 25% just believe that their internet connection is too slow in order to take advantage of it. So you have, it goes from the most extreme to the least extreme, but it still shows you that even with the least extreme, there are significant guardrails up as far as the perception of cloud gaming. So we're talking about 75% of gamers either don't find it attractive, don't trust the technology, or they say their internet connection is too slow and they don't even want to bother with it. The other 25% is your target audience, but they don't even know that it exists. So it's about you letting them know that it exists. And people will say, oh, okay, well, why doesn't Google Stadia attack that 25% market? I'm explaining to you why them and other people don't aggressively attack that 25% market. But you got to remember, 75% of people will not touch cloud game of gamers will not touch cloud gaming at all. They won't. They just won't. Okay? Great study. We talked about this last year. We talked about this middle last year, but I've noticed that over time there are more cloud gamers that are coming to the platform, quite possibly because of the LG C1, ironically. So it's great to go over this stuff over and over again. Okay. Now, with all that said, that's why Stadia said, even in current tense, during this conference, we are trying to solve. We're still working on solving the cloud gaming problem. The cloud gaming problem just isn't about shrinking the gap. It's about closing the gap, making that 75% confident that cloud gaming is for them, and by making cloud gaming affordable and accessible to make the conversion easy. It's going to take hard work. And Stadia realizes that now they do. I'm going to talk about why they do now, maybe better so than they did at launch. But now they understand that they're not going to leapfrog any of these projections. Like, the best way to win the hearts and minds of the average gamer is just to produce. And when I say produce, you gotta be able to give gamers what they're getting now at the top tier level, if not better. But there has to be some type of positive, this is an oxymoron, but some type of positive trade-off. It has to be cheaper. Okay, it's more convenient, but if I'm getting more convenient, but it's more expensive, I'd rather just stick to what I know. Like, all the tangibles, the trade-off has to be in the favor of cloud gaming. None of these platforms are there. None of them are going to get there anytime soon. Okay? So what Stadia is doing is, nobody's really people thought the 3080 tier would force them. It hasn't forced them because it's not accessible. It's doing some great things on paper. It's just not accessible. It's not even accessible to the average cloud gamer. Because of that price. We can get into the UI and having to have an extra device. It's the price. The price just stops the conversation for most cloud gamers there anyway. Might I even argue a good portion of already subscribed GFN gamers. Okay. All right. So, and that's the 3082. So, because they're talking as far, they're still solving the cloud gaming problem. Again, they're not worried about having a major impact on mainstream gaming retail right now. And secondly, they're building towards a bigger apex instead of rushing to being the best on paper now. Like, it's cool that GFN got Digital Foundry saying that they're the better cloud gaming platform. They got GFN to say that. But has that caused an exodus of gamers to jump on the 3080 tier? No. Because Digital Foundry's audience is going to say, well, that's cool for those that want to do cloud gaming, and yeah, now nobody's arguing that Stadia is the best. That's nice to know. And they're going to go about their business. They still, in that thingy, they haven't shown them why they should abandon what they already know and are familiar with for cloud gaming. Tell me that cloud gaming has better latency, has better visuals all around, and is more accessible, and is cheaper. Now you're talking. Even if it's better, it's slight. If it's more convenient and it's cheaper, then you can start, you know what I mean? But you got to have all those things working for you. They've also mentioned that the tools, that developer tool set, they've been available just for the last 2 quarters. So now developers are getting used to it. So we might start to see, better end product. A lot of people, including myself, have been complaining about the quality of games going into the latter part of 2021. Particularly the Ubisoft games. We the 1080p, the 30 frames per second, capped at 30 frames per second, we really weren't enjoying that. You know what I mean? Some of these games, like some of these more indie games, not having the 4K 60 mode. Like Grime and Lost Souls, I believe doesn't have a 4K mode. Why? Hopefully these tools will better do that. Okay. They're looking to support Unreal Engine 5. You do not. That right there shuts down a lot of the future argument. We're going to close down tomorrow. Oh, God. You don't go through the changes that you go through to support an engine that's going to be robust as Unreal Engine 5. You don't go through that, because that's going to take significant investment and sweat and equity to make that happen. You don't do that unless you have plans for the future. And unless you have plans for the future that go beyond 2 or 3 years. Because let's be real. If Stadia was just trying to linger around for 2 or 3 years and really weren't making investments to the future towards longevity, they could just stick with their Unreal Engine 4 support. Why would they need Unreal Engine 5? Unreal Engine 4 would do fine. Games, the vast majority of games for the next 2 to 3 years are still going to be developed on Unreal Engine 4. Not all of these publications are or not all of these developing houses are huge. They're still going to be developing on Unreal Engine 4. So Stadia can still pick plenty of games out of the Unreal Engine 4 lab for the next few years and then just stop if that was their plan. Why would they go through the rigors and investment and whatever and dealing with their platform to support Unreal Engine 5? If they're just looking to shut it down in a couple of years. If they're not looking to enhance the platform's output and performance. See, you hear what you want to hear when you're being stubborn and you're like, well, I got to get one over on this. You know what I'm saying? You got to get out of that when you want to make sure that you're cascading facts and information. Not necessarily, I want to be right. It's okay to give your opinion on certain things or whatever, but it always should come with a caveat. I'm not in the boardroom, so I don't know. I'm just following the facts. It looks like this is happening, it looks like that's happening. You're not going to be blamed for your opinion as long as you phrase it like that. But when you start taking your opinion that doesn't jive with the facts, and then because you get called out on it, you get upset, you get tenderhearted at it, and you want to get mad at people and act a certain way, and then double down and be stubborn, that's on you. It's going to be a reflection on you, and that's going to be a stink that you can't rub off. Because after one, as time goes on, and you keep going down these wrong paths, people are going to tune you out. Okay? So, stop caveating. It's in everyone's best interest, regardless of what level you're doing this. You're on social media, just talking or whatever you're doing. It's in your best interest to not caveat stuff. Still give your opinion and say, you know what, these are the things that are happening that kind of get a grip on me the most. But I'm not going to talk indefinitely on stuff that aren't factually proven. I'm not going to sit there and try to connect dots that aren't there. These are the facts. This is the likelihood. But I just got a feeling of XYZ. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody doesn't have to be a fortune teller. See, that's that old Michael Pachter thing that people can't let go from the eighth generation. When Michael Pachter, when people even was wasting their time listening to him, he predicted that. Everybody wants to be a predictor. Everybody wants to be Miss Cleo calling me now. Miss Cleo's in jail, I think. She did some major time. Her credibility is shot. Trying to be that fortune teller isn't always what it's cracked up to be. Follow the facts that are present and let's cascade that. I don't know how well they're going to fare in the future because they're doing X, Y. That's fair. Someone may be able to counter argue that, but that's a fair set. I don't know. You know, my opinion is. But to speak in absolutist terms, oh yeah, this is what this means. You don't do this unless, and ain't none of y'all ever spent a day in a damn boardroom. Y'all don't know how decisions are made in the Fortune 500 world. All you know is what companies that have been doing this for decades are doing today. You haven't been acclimated to the ins and outs of gaming for even the past 3 years. Just the past 2 years. And now you become a level expert to where, because this company that's new is doing it this way, but the other companies that have been doing this for decades are doing it another way, they must be getting out. Did you ever bother to check to go look back when they were new and see what they were doing? So when you say stuff like, or when y'all share with amongst your own echo chamber stuff like, well, they're getting out. They don't know what they want to do. It's only a couple minutes left. But they're looking to make the investment to support Unreal Engine. To support Unreal Engine 5 rather. When Unreal Engine 4 games, they're going to be the majority of the games for the next 2 or 3 years. So if it was just about lingering around the next 2 or 3 years, you ain't gotta support Unreal Engine. You ain't gotta start working on that now. If it's more likely than not that you're closing shop, you wait until you decide you're not closing shop before you make a significant investment or upgrade like that. When you don't know how things work, it's like Z always told me. Shout out to Broadband Bullies, my brethren. He says sometimes lies more entertaining than the truth. And some people are just more in tune with the whimsical conversation than they are the facts. But the fact of the matter is, Stadia is looking to support Unreal Engine 5, which is a clear indicator of long-term systemic, a plan that's long-term and systemic. Now, I'm not in the boardroom. I can't say, no, it's definite. Stadia is looking. The only thing that I can tell you in an absolutist form is that the current plans, because of certain things that are being made, the current plans are X, Y, and Z. These are indications that the current plans are X, Y, and Z. These are clear-cut indications, not shooting from the hip guesses. Clear indications that the plans are X, Y, and Z. Now, Google can get a new CEO tomorrow, or the current CEO can just wake up with the support of the board, which would be hellified crazy and stupid. But anything is possible. And say, you know what? We don't want to be in a gaming business like this. Even though cloud gaming is in the future, and you know, it's really too early for a company like us to back out. It just hurts my feelings that, you know, Paul Tassi and Tom Warren have said what they said about us during the 1% business phase. It really hurts. I barely make it to the bathroom at night. I'm so distraught. Let's close this down. Anything is possible. But what I'm telling you is, when you look at everything in totality from 5,000 feet, when it comes to a brand new company with an emerging tech under the current lane that has been configured mainly by Microsoft, you got to be lean and mean. And yes, sometimes you make an attempt to leapfrog projections, but when that attempt falls flat, you got to reel it in. And now with Microsoft, they showed you that the best secure way to operate is to have white labeling efforts really fuel your investment. Because in a year where Sony reached its 24-year high, Microsoft was able to only to get, you might as well say, 2/3 of what Sony made. Microsoft made 2/3 what Sony made during its 24-year high, and Microsoft had nothing acclaimed. A lot of that was fueled by them having third party, which Stadia is working towards. In the third party games that people want to play. That's why they were able to, by the end of December 2020, be up to 750,000 monthly active users, because they had the AAA game that people wanted to play, and in the most accessible means, the best and most accessible way to play that game was via Stadia. That kind of helped change their mind state. Also, they also saw that when you have other investment means going on, even when the games that you're producing aren't really hitting it all like that, they ain't bringing in the cash. If your third parties and your other investments are hitting, you can still do pretty damn good. 2/3 of what Sony did in its 24-year high with nowhere near the acclaim status for anything that they output. As a matter of fact, if you look at game sales, Microsoft was able to do 2/3 of what PlayStation did with, if my numbers are correct, I can go back to my spreadsheet. PlayStation had 30% more output altogether when it comes to units sold, everything. 30% more output. Still were able to get 2/3. And so what that tells investors is, just imagine when Microsoft is clicking on all cylinders, what they're going to be able to do. This was horrible as far as output. This was horrible compared to what PlayStation did. And they still were able to make 2/3 of what. Now these mugs done went and bought Bethesda, and they're trying to buy Activision Blizzard. That sent riptides through the investment world. Google's looking at that, and they're saying, okay, maybe this is what we need to get on. I mean, yes, you look across the street in Amazon, which this is not Amazon Prime. I mean, this is not Amazon Luna, this is Amazon Game Development. Yeah, you can look at Amazon making their own games. But see, Amazon is making games they can put on PC. They ain't think about putting them games on the cloud platforms, not yet. So, and lastly, one of the big things they said is new tools are enticing devs to come back. I think that's dope. So devs that, and the way that it was being talked about, because this was a Q&A question. It was asked, what can we do to get, more games? I think the question was, and and the way he phrased it, it sounded like to me that he was including not only devs that, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm cool with the platform since day one, but devs to where maybe they weren't cool with the platform after they created a game or whatever. They're looking at what's going on now and they said, maybe I'll come back. One of those developers is 2K. Take-Two. Right? So that's where we're at with the developer conference, okay? Last but not least, and I gotta whiz through this one. I should have let off with this one, but last but certainly not least is a subject matter that is dear to my heart as of late because I've been seeing a lot of talk about it. Because a lot of people feel like maybe Stadia is in a place of no return. They quote unquote screwed up so bad at launch, and they'll never be able to come back. But the final subject matter is, did Stadia do it all wrong? And I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. Did Stadia do it all wrong? Just give me a second to get my time tag together. Let me see something here. I'm going to do it one more time. Did Stadia do this? Give me a moment, I'm sorry. Did Stadia do this all wrong? I'm really messing up here. I'm trying to learn, y'all. I'm trying to learn. I promise. All right. So let's talk about it, and then we're going to close up. There's 4 sectors that I want to talk about when it comes to did Stadia do it all wrong? Meaning, was their approach to rolling out their cloud gaming platform just a complete and utter cluster blank? And looking at it now, did they just do everything wrong? And the things that you hear now, you get that impression when you hear people talk about the things that have gone wrong. And clearly their heart and emotion is into it because they love the platform. And they just want it. They want to see it. They want to see its name to stop being dragged through the mud. So I get it. I understand. But the things that where people really, get all fiery about is the launch, the game situation, getting beat to the punch, and lastly, how they deal with the media. Okay, so I'm going to talk about all of them. All right, so first and foremost, the launch. The thing that I hear the most, and I'm going to be honest with you, this one shows, and I hear this. Well, hold on, give me 1 second. Hold on, I got to blow my nose. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So we hear this in circles where I get confused because sometimes when I'm listening to the circles having these conversations or when I see it, some of which that are in these circles are people that I've talked to thoroughly about the timing of things. And at the time that we talked about this way back when it was happening, even when we were criticizing and when we were having these conversations about it, and then we were criticizing, you know, maybe the rollout and how we were affected individually, whatever. They seem to understand it then, but now they don't understand it now. And it confuses me. When I hear the mantra that Stadia should have waited. Okay. Here's why Stadia couldn't wait. As we all know, we can't have short-term memory when it comes to this stuff. As we all know, we need the biggest thing that's happening with cloud gaming right now is the building years. Not only are they trying to build relationships, but they're trying to build the performance of the platform. And these are not static platforms where when you roll it out on day one, what you see is what you get. And depending upon developer, you're not going to see any improvements on XYZ platform unless the developer manually intervenes. That's not true with cloud gaming. You have the AI and the machine learning that's taking place to where certain things, and they've already talked about this with the pipeline caches, where certain things happen and certain things get enhanced without the atypical intervention. Without a particular patch. We talked about how when you game on Tuesday, 3 Tuesdays from now, you realize that the game is performing better. I think the biggest example is I'm always leery, not so much now as I used to be, but particularly in 2020 I was. But I'm still leery of getting certain games day one. Because in 2020, honestly, the overwhelming majority, particularly AAA games that I got day one, opposite of Doom Eternal, all gave me problems. Y'all remember my big blow up with Division 2? Oh, I went off. I can't remember a game that I got day and date where it just didn't look good, or it may have looked good, but the latency or the lag just was off, or there wasn't, not a whole bunch of crashes, but it just wasn't performant upon the Stadia bread and butter. We know that it always happens in day one. So I'm one that over time learned that for me not to muddy the water with my experience with the game, maybe give it a day or two. Let some of the kinks be worked out or whatever. Maybe give it a day or two. And that strategy never failed me. I let Storm would be playing the game. Storm, oh man, it's cheese right now. You know what I'm saying? And or I'll come back to it later and people are like, oh, that's good. But every Cyberpunk, every single game that I've had in Cyberpunk, even though Cyberpunk was horrible elsewhere, it wasn't perfect on Stadia at launch. And now that we're in 2022, you still see signs of that, but not as much as you did in 2020. And not as long as you, like, sometimes it would take a week for a game to get to its Stadia normal frequency, as I like to call it. Now it's a couple of days when that does occur. It's not always occurring, but it does. But I was listening to Nerd Nest, and shout out to them, and they were talking about how the Need for Speed I forgot the name of the developers, but how the Need for Speed game, Lloyd was talking about how day one it was just horrible to do, and he said he went back to it later and it was better. Those are, I believe, examples. You know, there may be some intervention in there that, you know, some little bit of tweaking or whatever, but not at the intensity that it would need to be with a dedicated device where you have to sit on a pad. I just think that there are times you even look at, I've even looked at games like Cyberpunk, where the first 2 or 3 days I played Cyberpunk, I didn't like it at all. And I just went and bought the game on PC. And then, like, maybe day 4, maybe I'm getting my days mixed up, but this is how it worked. Day 4, it really started, was looking back, like, oh, okay. And you could see the patch number, and the patch number didn't change. It was still the same version. And I'm like, oh, okay. Wow, the magic is Stadia. So, the reason why I brought that up is for that time to go down like how it does or whatever. For Stadia to get the data that it needs to make the enhancements that it's going to put forward in the future, it had to come out now. And I mean, it had to come out when it came out. And thank goodness it came out when it did come out. If they waited a year after the ramifications of COVID really hit, can you imagine going to people at the end of 2020, release on my new platform that really doesn't have a player base, opposed to coming to them at the end of 2019? You know how horrible that would have been? How many more games would have probably been sent off later? And without the player data that was available several months in advance, even porting houses like QLock or whatever probably wouldn't have had the crucial data that they needed to make games like Cyberpunk 2077 such a standout on Stadia opposed to where it was anywhere else. They had to come out when they came out. It just was that the events surrounding that time frame just weren't good. But delaying it any further means that you delay the process of the AI and the machine learning. All of that stuff is critical, not just critical information that you give the devs to help us result into better, things now. But can you imagine pushing back the development tool set a year? Because all that stuff comes from Okay, we're actually going live with this game. From that process of going live and dealing with actual players. Oh man, we want to fix XYZ thing, but we got to go into the test region in order to do it, and that's too complicated because we can't go into the active player region to do it. Like, you don't get to this point that you're at now earlier in the game by releasing later. This is not a dedicated device where everything, the pillars are so static. It's not like that. This is completely different. So by waiting off a year, you're likely pushing off the development toolkit a year. Because you need that live player data in order to navigate and know what you need to improve. Also, and that's more, the AI and the machine learning aspects of this are important to get out of the way sooner rather than later. Because imagine also if they would have related, because it's like dominoes. You need, not only does the developers need that player data so things can get better sooner, as far as the toolkits and all that other stuff, in the not the SDK but the GDK, whatever terminology they use for how things are developed on the platform. But it's like a domino effect. Without that player data, you don't get to see the rollout of the features that Stadia implemented until you don't get to see that until later. What do I mean? When Stadia first launched, they couldn't do 4K but only on the CCU. It took them utilizing the player data on the browser to tweak that. Then there was no online store. Now, I'm not sure if that would have been affected, but yeah, but in all likelihood, that had to be worked out too. Player data, what kinks can players do in order to mess up the store online that we need to safeguard. That gets pushed back later. So here's the things that are likely domino effects of you waiting. You still can only do 4K on the CCU. You have no online store again by the end of 2020. You have limited features and still by the end of 2020. And then you still have limited phone access. And there could be more. There could be things I'm not even touching that are a domino effect of you not getting that player data in time. You're getting that player data later and making the enhancements later. So all this, so you're not able to do all these things that we've been living with for over, I want to say, a year and a half now, for most of it. You don't do any of this stuff until the second half of 2021. So let's just say the second half of 2021, we finally get 4K on more things in the browser, get an online store. You know, they're starting to roll out crowd play or crowd choice or whatever. They're rolling it out on more phones. Only for GFN to have already done some of these things, like rolled out to more phones, because they could have, because you're not saying GFN should have held back. You're just saying Stadia should have held back. So GFN's still rolling out the things to plan. They come out in mid 2020, so they got a head start in their retail development. They're already on more phones, right? And so forth. And not only that, a few months after Stadia finally gets all this stuff, the 4K on the browser, whatever, bam, they drop the 3080 tier. Now, come on. The 3080 tier, even though it's pricey, the deterrent to the 3080 tier to the Stadia core demographic is we already got Stadia, and this is cool enough at a more reasonable price. But it took time and implementation for it to get there. If by the time the 3080 tier drops, they don't have any of this stuff 4K beyond the CCU, online store, limited features, limited phone access, and so on, that 3080 tier becomes more enticing, and the trajectory just don't look the same. So yeah, maybe you hold off and more games are released. You know, you've compressed all the, instead of the games being released out over the time that they were in 2020, you've compressed a lot more of them into the end of 2020 going into 2021. So now you still launch with Cyberpunk, okay, but more, you know, all those other games come out and there's more games. Yeah, but if those games are not performing up to par because there's no prior data to help tweak how these things work, what's the point? Kind of have an Xcloud situation. Maybe not as bad as Xcloud. Stadia was never as bad as Xcloud. Even now on its, you know, Xbox Series X and Stadia launch was never, but it's too scaled back. GFN is then sitting at the top by itself because it gets that 3080 tier, and people's like, ooh, that's pricey, but I'm into this cloud gaming thing now. It has a bigger impact, and it changes the trajectory. And Stadia, I think, even though they would have loved to do things better, there's lessons that have been learned. They're in a good spot. Them and GFN are at the top. Now, who's at the top depends upon what litmus you're looking at. I feel like GFN's had more people come across the platform, but because of GFN's limited revenue or business model, it could be that Stadia's making more money. Look, they got Stadia Pro. You can buy games a la carte. They're getting DLCs and microtransactions and things like that GFN doesn't get. You got to be subscribed. So, with that said, I don't know. I think Stadia came out when they had to. It's just that the timing wasn't where the events were unfortunate. Like, I've said this 1,000 times and I'll say it again. Imagine if Stadia launches with its 22 games. Doom Eternal launches in December like it's supposed to. Cyberpunk releases in March, I think it was, like it's supposed to, and that's still day and date. Marvel Alliance, the Marvel game launches in May, like it's supposed to. Ubisoft Plus and the games that are associated to Ubisoft Plus or Uplay Plus at the time launch when they're supposed to. Like in the first half, I think it was in 2020. And you still got Baldur's Gate. You still got the Ubisoft titles that come. You still got NBA 2K. Like, come on. It probably would be a different conversation right now. And maybe Stadia would have hit that million. But when everything got pushed back, I kind of threw everything. They would have been on a roll. They would have been on a good roll. And they would have been on a good roll that was up to par with the consoles. All of the major games that were coming out on the consoles at the time, if things wouldn't have got pushed back, all of the games that people had to attention on the most, Stadia would have been getting them. But what happened was all that stuff got pushed back, so the games at that time that people had their minds on changed, and Stadia wasn't getting those games. I think they came out when they were supposed to. It's just that there should have been some things that were done to shore up the success of the launch. Like, I feel like they needed to come out with Stadia free sooner. I feel like that needed to be sooner. I also feel like that you had some experienced vets in the form of Jack Buser and Phil Harrison. They've been doing this for a long time. I was disappointed to see that their strategy was based upon these games not being pushed back. Like, I get you not expecting Ubisoft Plus to be pushed back, but you expecting these games, like, there should have been something to fill the void, because really every single game, I think the only game that surprised me that got pushed back was Doom Eternal. You should have known Cyberpunk was getting pushed back. You should have known Marvel was getting pushed back. And I would have had a couple of more AAA games, maybe older ones, that I threw some money down on to get them there too. Like BioShock, the collection, was a no-brainer. While you still had 2K on your good side, I think BioShock, the collection, was a no-brainer. You should have bought that one. I don't know what else you could have got. It'll probably hit me later. But that does boggle me, that because this is what shows me that a lot of journalists, mainstream journalists, and shout out to Akash Monger, he put out a New York Post article that showed you why, and they really did a great job in explaining why mainstream journalists are just horrible at covering tech. Like, even if they're a supposed tech publication, like, basically what they do is somebody's designated to try the tech or whatever. They're there for a little bit of the time. They're like, everybody's not like Digital Foundry. Like Digital Foundry, regardless of their separation from how cloud gaming works and some of the crazy stuff that they said, everything that they write about, they're hands-on with. It's not always the case with a lot of these tech people. Like, a lot of this stuff is interpreted to them by somebody. And New York Post, they don't necessarily talk so much about that, but just talk about the disconnect that a lot of these mainstream articles have. Even if those people have a lot of volume around tech, they're just disconnected from what is tech when it reaches an epiphany. It's growing pains and all that other stuff. They're disconnected from it. So mainstream sources are not best for going through tech. You got to find content creators. Thank God for them, that now are everywhere, that you see them get hands-on with this stuff and they have a knowledge of it. They're not just taking their knowledge of something else that may be slightly similar and trying to apply it here. They really get into the nooks and crannies of it. That's who you got to rely on. You can't rely on mainstream media when it comes to new emerging technology. With that being said, yeah, that does puzzle me that they didn't have a couple of more games to fill in that gap. And say and push the narrative and say these are just great, we're still in the building phase and we're just providing people a great way to play their favorite games anywhere they want to. You know what I mean? So another thing that I hear that boggles my mind, honestly, is They should have said it was a beta. The reason why this boggles my mind is not because of the theory that's behind this. Under balanced circumstances, this would make sense. And it would be true. In an alternate universe, I'm going to say it. This is not going to be popular with those that just want to simply be neutral. But we don't say the popular things here. We take the risks to tell you the truth. And I ain't got to lie about video games. As a matter of fact, if you want to call me a liar or if I'm over exaggerating, show me where I've over exaggerated on something or I've lied about anything. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. There have been times to where I've gotten things off base, like my belief that Stadia should, move faster in competing with Xbox and PlayStation. I thought it would be sooner rather than later, and I was misinformed. And I came out and made a video and said MM2K got it wrong. Because another content creator showed me why my belief in that was wrong. But that's my opinion. That was my belief. That's what they were looking to do. That was my interpretation, my understanding. I'm talking about stone cold facts, what I'm about to say right now that's not popular. But I know because of experience. Stadia is not hated on because the mainstream media got their wires tangled on what to expect from Stadia because Google didn't explain it right. The mainstream media does not like Stadia because all they wanted from this platform was a better Game Pass. That's all they wanted. Most of the mainstream media don't get the need for cloud gaming. They feel like cloud gaming is a solution looking for a problem. They feel like that it's a diversion from steady device gaming because the focus should be how do we get 4K 60 or 4K 120 on this hardware more often than not. That's the focus of the media. Because journalists have opinions too. It's just the problem with today's journalists is that they don't know how to balance and separate their own personal conjecture from just telling facts. The art has been fused together. Facts are whatever you believe they are. So write it that way. Get us clicks. That's what it is. And we see it often from a lot of the top journalists. Like, I don't think that they don't feel like they're doing something malicious because this is the culture of the company that they're writing for. They're not the only guilty ones doing it. They're just the most recognized ones doing it. So why are you targeting me, they feel like sometimes. But the culture in a lot of these places just isn't based on you giving a factually reported story. When you go look at think tanks that look at the reporting from news outlets, they will tell you that most news outlets only tell you the facts 70% of the time. So there's a third of the time that any news outlet on any given day is giving you stuff that's factually wrong, that belongs in an opinion piece, but they're trying to sell it as fact. I'm not making this stuff up. This is the current climate that they're in. And even a publication that's in the 90th percentile is considered to be good. You're still giving me misinformation a tenth of the time. The question is, when is a tenth of that time? Is it over important stuff? Is 90% of the time the fluff stuff that doesn't really matter, but the important stuff where you're trying to sway decisions for your own personal benefit? Or you're trying to lobby people for a cause that you guys are embedded in that personally benefits you, but they're important things? Again, any given publication is expected to only give you factual information 70% of the, again, that's a third of the time that they're giving you mistruths. A third. That's crazy to me. But what's even crazier is that most of you, 90% of you, if not 100% of you on the other end of this mic, don't even know that. You're not even aware of those figures. You think MM2K is just up here shaking his fist and trying to make a name for himself because he's loud. Believe you me when I tell you, it's just part of my nature. Whenever I get into something, I don't just grab a headline. I'm not good with just satellite researching something. I gotta get my hands dirty. I gotta be connected to the sources that are responsible for my quote unquote education. Meaning, if there's a publication, a podcast, whatever it may be, that I feel like is enlightening me with information that I feel like I'm connecting to, I find a way. I use my Fortune 500 experience in being able to show people that I can relate to their situation. And I find a way to connect to that because I got to be closer to the source. For my own comfortability, I got to be closer to the source, and I got to be able to kick the tires on what they're telling me. Find out to make me more comfortable, because I'm really digging what they're telling me, but I got to find out where it's coming from. And I ain't got to know the name of the source or whatever, but I got to see the methodology on what you're working with so I can feel comfortable in saying, okay, all right, I get it now. Yes, I can continue to rely on you. So, believe you me, even though we may not talk live on air, even though you may not see us at the Hucklebuck together or whatever, I know and have rubbed elbows with a lot of your favorite content creators. I have talked to people who are behind the thinking, if not to them directly. I have talked to the people behind the thinking of a lot of these articles that you are reading. I'll say, well, I'll put a good number. Let me not blame them for over-exaggerating. I rub elbows with a good number of your favorite content creators. I have talked to, had conversations either directly with or with the people directly behind the thinking of people that write these articles. I find a way to do it. I have to. That's my own paranoia. I got to get close to the information. 25 years, well, I want to say the whole 25 years, but for a long time doing data analytics, keeping my lights on by having to ensure efficiency, 100% efficiency, 100% efficiency. My kids say that having that role has poisoned me because I make them suffer because of it. I always make them do extra. Why, Dad? Why we gotta do all that? Leave no stone unturned. Just for comfort. That's just to make you comfortable. You're extra. Yes, I am. I am not lying to you when I tell you that in interacting with these people, here's what I've learned about their approach when it comes to Stadia. Again, Stadia is just a solution looking for a problem. Its only use right now was to be a better Game Pass. Because it's not a better Game Pass, and the belief that it's a solution looking for a problem. We don't like cloud gaming, and this is going to be the crash test dummy of why we're going to say cloud gaming isn't viable right now, why it should be ignored. We don't know much about it. We are already consumed with writing these clickbaity headlines on dedicated devices. We don't want to have to pay attention to this thing unless it is a significant game changer right now. I don't want to be talking about up and coming tech unless it's undoubtedly changing everything. My workload is heavy enough. This thing just sucks. Here's what they do, which is sly. They say Xcloud is cool. I ain't got a problem with cloud gaming. No, of course not, MM2K. That's false. Wherever you got those inclinations from, that's false. Here's why, MM2K. I'm okay with cloud gaming. I like Xbox, cloud streaming. Remember when Paul Tassi told me that every time Xcloud did something, he could hear for Stadia the slow Titanic music playing in the background? I should send Paul a retweet and say, hey, is this you? What's up with Xcloud now? You know what I'm saying? Because nobody's talking about it. In any relevant sorts, not even in the cloud gaming community. Not really, no. It's Stadia, GFN, and now you're hearing murmurs every now and again about Amazon Luna. Amazon Luna is starting to get a little bit of traction. Still at the levels of GFN and Stadia now, but it's starting to get some traction. So yeah, I like, I don't mind Amazon. Amazon has a better business model. You know what I'm saying? Like, they say all these positive things about all the other cloud platforms except for Stadia. None of it makes sense. But see, by attrition of eliminating Stadia as a viable source, the first fully recognized cloud platform that's out there for retail, by attrition, you add doubt to all the other cloud platforms. And you get the same desired result. And you move on. So, trust me when I tell you, this is not based off a hunch. These are based off of thorough conversations that I've had with some of your favorite podcasters, content creators. If I told you the names of the people that I had conversations with, you would say, you talked to them? Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Look, if I want to talk to you, if I feel like that the information that you have to give me is resourceful, and it's not a one-way street. I'm big on bartering. Okay. Being in the Fortune 500 world for two and a half decades does that to you. I'm a big barterer. I'm a big negotiator. So I always make sure that I got something of value for you. Maybe that you didn't even expect from me. That's kind of how you build on relationships. I should have a master class on how to build relationships with high profile entities. You know what I'm saying? Earn me a little bit extra coin to get me another LGC one. No, I'm just joking. But that's what me being in my field has blessed me to be able to be exposed to. In my field, I've had to go deal and collaborate on help shifting uniform commercial codes, regulations with our competitors. Some competitors, we strategically needed them to be involved, but they felt like that it didn't affect them. So of course, because I'm a competitor and I'm reaching out to you and I want to set up a meeting or whatever, you're standoffish. I gotta find a way. So I keep my lights on. I gotta get you involved. You have to be involved. We strategically need you. So all I did was take that same experience that's done at a more complicated level and applied it to the content creation world. I've talked personally to some of your favorite content creators. We've had personal conversations about this whole Stadia thing that they'll never tell you, and I'll never tell you as well. Specifically, all I can do is give you the general thesis of where their state of mind is with this. And you can believe it or not, in your attempt to be neutral towards journalists and try to be a fair mind because you feel that it's good to do that for stability. You can believe it all you want. I don't have such needs. My only goal is to cascade the truth. So I'm here to tell you that again, before I move on, Stadia was only beneficial to the mainstream media as a better Game Pass. B, when it wasn't doing that and was trying to be a viable platform on its own, like a PlayStation or an Xbox, just at whatever level or whatever scale, it was a solution looking for a problem. And their ears went shut after that. Also, another reason why, well, I'll say this before I get to that point, and it's not going to change for a while, because in order for it to change, they got to have the Nintendo effect, the Switch effect. What do I mean by that? Y'all remember when the Switch released? When the Switch released, because of the failures of the Wii U, when the Switch released, they were like, we don't understand the purpose of this thing. This thing is stupid. This thing is idiotic. Video after video, article after article, they were really dogging the Switch until consumers said, no, we like this. And the Switch started doing crazy numbers. The media was then forced to report it. They were forced to report it, even though they wanted to just focus on PlayStation and Xbox and the console war, because that was giving them the clicks. PlayStation fanboys targeting Phil Spencer and Shannon Loftus and Aaron Greensberg. Xbox fanboys targeting Yoshida and Sean Layton and Mark Cerny. And the Rapid Pack math, that's a failure, and Crackdown 3, that's trash, all that stuff. They didn't want to have to talk about this Nintendo thing that they really didn't know much about, because the effort was on PlayStation and Xbox. Okay, are you coming to the game and you're changing the game at the PlayStation or Xbox level? Nintendo said, no, we got something different in mind. The media at first said this is stupid, and they tried to poop all over the Switch. The resolution of games and frame rates and all this other stuff, this ain't up to par to PlayStation and Xbox. This is idiotic to bring this out. And this was on the heels of the failure of the Wii, just like with cloud gaming. With the failure of On Live, that was the symbolism of cloud gaming. People were like, okay, we're now over that, and now we're focused back on the dedicated hardware. What are you bringing to the table? Because I hope you're not trying to do a cloud gaming platform again. Maybe if it's like, is it going to be better than Game Pass? Yeah, okay. If you're bringing a game, that's what they're going to do. And Google didn't say anything to drown that out. They didn't put out a statement. They just let people's imaginations run wild. They never said it, and the media should have done better, because they're the ones that wrote it. That's why I always put the majority of the focus on them. However, Stadia is not innocent in this, because they let it go on too long until somebody was like, oh no, somebody finally sat down with somebody from Stadia and said, what's your business model again? And Stadia was like, well, we're, there is no, all of our games are not wrapped in a subscription. You got to buy them what? And that's when they turned off. Okay. So understand how the media works. All you gotta do is look at the precedent. Look at precedent. Look at other things that were in similar situations. The only thing that got Wii out of its predicament is that gamer, and none of the media foresaw it. That's another thing too. They didn't foresaw it. They wrote the Switch was dead on arrival to them. To most of the media at the time, it was dead on arrival. It was stupid. The nunchucks were too small. It just was dumb. It wasn't until it started doing crazy numbers that they were forced to do it. That's not just Stadia. That's just cloud gaming's only way out. When, like Ubisoft said in their recent investment call, when cloud gaming becomes 20, 30, 40, but they said 50% of the market, then it'll be taken seriously. Until then, no. And until then, the poster child of failure, whether they move the goalpost from it being dead to it being deprioritized, to help better explain why it's still around and still for them to use negative talking points. That's what that's not going away. So we got to understand what's going on here. And again, I take it from me. I have had conversations with some of your favorite content creators. Think the minds behind the thinking when these articles are written, if not directly them. That's how Stadia was and is looked at. And when that's the dynamic, there's nothing Stadia can do but outperform Xbox or PlayStation to change it. It's the only way they can change it. That was the only way to avoid this really in the first place. Once they ran their mouths for several months and said that Stadia was going to be a better Game Pass because Google got all this money and they're going to do what Microsoft can't. And they went and died on that hill only to be wrong because they didn't vet the information. Their minds were made up directly after that. We're dogging the hell out of this thing. We're mad, we're upset, and we're dogging the hell out of this thing until it goes away. And the only way, even if the launch was right, even if everything was on time, even if Dean Takahashi, I believe it was never able to replicate the silly thing of having a workplace VPN and hitting the spacebar, if none of that, they still would have found ways to dog it. The only way Stadia wouldn't have been dogged at launch is if it performed just as good as, if not better, than Xbox or PlayStation. So until it produces those numbers, which we know because of how niche cloud gaming is, that won't be a while. These are going to be the norms. Not saying Stadia has to just like roll over and deal with it. They got to find ways to navigate that. And right now, I get why they do a lot of the things that they do now when you look at 2021 and 2022. Because Stadia is that poster child. They do things differently. Another reason why the whole Stadia should have been a beta thing, I think, was avoided though, despite that. If it wasn't for this dynamic with the rules of engagement as it came to Stadia with the mainstream media, if it wasn't for that, I would agree that maybe it should have been marked as a beta. However, maybe Google felt like in order for them to get the support that they were getting during the end of a generation when developers are focusing on new hardware, now you got this new platform that doesn't have a prior user base, so it's not guaranteed to make you money. Maybe Google felt like they had to go out there and come up with this lofty expectation of a 1% business getting 1 million active users by the end of the year. Even though that's not a lot, and that's a sure sign that they weren't trying to compete with consoles, for the state of cloud gaming and the percentages that I told you, 75% of cloud gamers, or 75% of the gaming public either don't find cloud gaming attractive, don't trust the technology, or say that the internet connection is too slow. They should have realized that unless you have a mastery of the media, which is the only thing that can catapult you to the other 25% and put you in their good grade. If you don't have the media melding in your hands, that million was, wow, that million wasn't being reached. Because look, even though you got a lot of games that if they would have launched on time, they would have been locked foot as far as what consoles were giving you. Even though that, you know, you had that on your side. you don't have fellow gamers. The vast majority of fellow gamers are negative about this. You didn't have exclusive content that was really going to reach mass appeal. You didn't have it. You had good games. You had some great, you like Baldur's Gate, even in early access, is great. Guilt is a great indie game. But you didn't have a AAA game that, again, would scream to the masses and say, okay, this is a platform you should pick up. You didn't have that. So because you didn't have those mouthpieces that would have helped you take advantage of that 25% and get you to that million, I don't know where that million came from. Maybe they felt like that's just a tough goal that they had to get and put out there because that will be the expectations along with the money in order to get these developers to even give this thing any attention. Oh, we're Google. We feel like we can get 1 million. Okay. And you're writing us a check. Okay, that sounds good. So not only are you writing us a check, but y'all have 1 million active users. DLC will be popping. Multiplayer will be popping. You know what I'm saying? Okay, this is dope. All right, let's do it. So I think that 1 million monthly active users was used to help get the participation that they got. For a lot of it, they really were pressing hard on that, and I think they had things set up to where if everything would have fell in place, which you're a new company, you never rely on everything to fall in place. If everything would have fell in place, they would have been a lot closer, if not fully achieving that goal. But normal things that happen in the video game world happen, and they could have been better prepared for that. Next, let's talk about the games. They feel like they needed their library to be more on par with the multi-plat diversity you see on consoles. Yes, but again, this is nuanced technology. Again, like I said earlier in the previous point, what's the point of having a bunch of games if they don't perform well? You know what I mean? And I think, yeah, if you would have condensed all those games that you got approval of into 2021, yeah, but then again, I think they would have really been in a tough spot had what do you call it? GFN just released a few months later with the 3080 tier, and they're still just trying to roll this stuff out. You know, so including the games. So I get the sentiment, but you had to have the games out there. You had to have them ones that you had signed when you had them signed to get that AI, that machine learning, that experience with the platform in the hands of the developers. I do think that we need to see more consistent performance over time. I think that needs to be done better. You know, again, the whole 4K 30 and max performance thing, I'm not a fan of that. I get 4K 30 being a mode, but you got to have a 60 frames per second mode, and I think we're kind of getting past the point of 1080p 60 being upscaled. We need to see like a 1440p. We need to see those modes. 1440p 60. I think we're at that point now to where that's where we're at. You know what I mean? I think if you want to be taken serious as a gaming platform with AAA games on it, you upscale from 1440p. It's like coming out of, 1080p is now starting to go into the archive folder like 720p is. Hold on one second. Hold on. And I get also that most homes don't have 4K displays in them just yet, but I'd be willing to argue that gamers make up maybe the smaller portion of the 4K homeowner. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, I'd be willing to argue that, okay, maybe only 30% of homes have 4K displays, but out of that 30%, I would say it's 70% of them are gamers. You know what I'm saying? So even though they may not be the majority of overall TV users, they're the majority of gamers. I would start making that argument. If that isn't the case now, it's going to be the case very soon. 4K TVs, like they're getting cheaper and cheaper now. Even with all this technology, OLEDs are getting cheaper. Like I said, I got a LG C1 hanging on my wall right now. An OLED. This is an OLED TV. One of the top lauded OLED TVs out there, the LG C1 for gaming, hanging on my wall right now. Like, these things are getting more and more affordable and more accessible. So I think we're starting to get to the point to where an upscale 1080p has to start going out of the window. And I'm thinking, again, you got to show the progression. I like the 100 games still coming. I know a lot of things will still look the same, but you got to show progression, for the most part. And what would be good to see, I mean, I know everybody wants to see 4K 60 everything, but maybe, I doubt it this year, but I think it's not out of reason to ask for, all right, let's abolish 1080p upscale on a AAA game. Let's abolish it. Let's work to abolish it. Let's get to where towards the latter end of the year, all right, where previously anywhere between 80% of our games, performance mode, were in upscale 1080p 60. To the latter part of this year, let's make it 60. Still got more, you know what I'm saying? But you're making that progress to where, and then next year, let's flip it to 40 or 30. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially when you get to 2023, 1080p upscale. It's not, I think, it shouldn't be entertained as much as we've seen in the past. There should be some type of reasonable progression to where we'll see a 1440p upscale. Okay. Another thing that people are upset about is Stadia getting beat to the punch. All right. So Amazon in particular said they got crowd choice. They came out with first, couch co-op, click to play on game streaming pages. Now they got this button where you can push the button. Like if I go to Twitch, and let's just say I look up the medium, and I'm like, I wonder who's streaming the medium. And when I go look that up, the medium's on Luna. So what Luna has done is they got a button out that says, hey, you can play this on Luna. So they've made that seamless integration, which I think is a good idea to do. Stadia talked about it first, but Amazon implemented it first. And we're seeing a lot of that. Stadia they introduced Ubisoft Plus coming to the cloud. Amazon got it first. Couch co-op was talked about Stadia first, or found in the APK. Amazon came out with it first. And then now they got this, the click to play or crowd choice, and now this click to play button. Here's the thing to consider. People are losing their lunch about this. And I look at this as more of a kudos for Amazon. And I'm not saying this to hate on them, but Amazon really has made no significant leaps forward with the rush to do before Stadia moves. Like the crowd choice thing that they have. Y'all probably forgot that they have that there. Couch co-op. Remember that was supposed to derail Stadia? And now this click to play on the game. I mean, that's cool, but what games do they have opposite of Smite that people are going to be looking for to stream anyway? Right? I mean, what games are on Luna that are in the top 50, let alone 100 games watched on a streaming platform? So this is why I say I caution people. Just relax on focusing on the timing. Opposite of Smite, there's really nothing that will take it. There's no game that'll take advantage of it because there's no game on Luna that people are really looking for to stream. Like Stadia has more games that are in the top 100 on Twitch than Luna has. Okay? So this isn't something like, oh, Stadia gotta get this now because they came out with it in February 2022. Calm your horses. Stadia might not drop it till June. It'll be more impactful when they do drop it, trust me. It's cool that Amazon got it first, active. But here's something else to think about. Amazon needs to keep taking Stadia's ideas and coming out with them first, because they're currently at the bottom as far as utilization out of all the cloud platforms. They're sitting there along with Xbox and Shadow or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Now people may say, well, that's not fair, them 2K, they're only in one territory. Whatever. They gotta build themselves up and launch pad into somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Some type of way. So let them keep taking Stadia's ideas and utilizing them. Because hopefully what Stadia's doing is they're like, oh, they took that one from us. Well, we're brushing it off, making sure that it's more impactful. When we drop it, it's going to be serious. Amazon's not doing anything with this because what games do they have on there that are part of the top 100 stream games? Like I said, Stadia has more than Luna. Stadia has more games on the platform that are in the top 100 games streamed on Twitch. So stop. All right. Also, well, no, I think I already went over that. Simply put, Stadia is trying to build the most stable, diverse, and consistently reliable way to game on the cloud. That's long-term thinking. They're not in this game to rush to push stuff out during the 1% phase. Again, no need to do that just to beat Amazon Luna by a month or something like that when it's insignificant. It's cool that the update is there, but it's not significantly changing anything because where is it going to be fully utilized, right? There's no need for them to do that. They're already at the top, them and GFN, okay? Now, here's where my highlights might get more controversial, but you know, I love it. People are upset that GFN has come out with quote-unquote next-gen performance features faster than Stadia. Here's what I gotta say to that. GFN got a 3 to 4 year head start. And again, because Stadia is already the most diverse way to interact with cloud gaming, they don't need to rush implementation. Okay, let's look at the 3080 tier. The 3080 tier, though being impressive, feels rushed in different capabilities, feels staggered for a platform that's already cemented in the cloud gaming space. And it's likely, and what do I mean by that? Like, okay, you've been doing this, again, 3 to 4 years earlier than Stadia, right? Come up with this new tier, way more expensive than your other tiers because of how it requires lump payments. There's not monthly, and just the price, $200 a month, right? With that being said, when it releases, I can't do 4K 60 everywhere. The only way I can get 4K 60 is with your $200 device. Now, I can utilize some other AI upscaling that's, you know, I don't want to say similar because I don't know what's behind the technology, but I can utilize other AI upscaling that will enhance my 1440p resolution on your PCs and your Macs. I can utilize that, but only if I got a specific cards. And on the phones, I can't get the 4K, even if I got a phone capable of 4K. I think if phones and maxes out at 1080p. If I'm playing on an Android device, I get Stadia, I mean, not Stadia, I get GFN Pro performance and visuals. And I might argue, because I've tried it, I get this weird latency problems, because what I'm guessing is going on why GFN's latency latency is so great is that they've really worked hard on the AI for the predictive controlling. Predictive controlling tells where you're going even before you get there. It uses a lot of computation to do that. It's nothing new. Cloud gaming didn't invent it. It was being used in games like Call of Duty and stuff like that even before cloud gaming started using it. Stadia's methodology of using predictive controlling was the best until the 3080 tier came out. And what they basically did is just from this is a guess. What I'm believing that they did is they just worked on their AI, worked on it until the predictive controlling got better. And it works well in their app on the PC or on the Chromebook. Well, I don't know. I can't talk for the Chromebook, so I won't say that. But it works well on the app for the PC. It works well for the browser. Or no, you know what? I don't even know if it works on a browser. It works well on the PC app. It works well with the NVIDIA Shield. But I'm here to tell you that if you're playing with the 3080 tier service activated on a dongle, like an Android stick or Google TV or whatever, that predictive controlling is out of sync. Goes too far. Like I'll tap the left button and I'm going too far. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not in sync. Something in the coding or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe those apps. It's like they intricately tied some yarn to a twig and to a pine cone or whatever. They did it in this amazingly intricate way. But as soon as you put in another variable, it all falls apart. You see what I'm saying? It's like too piecemeal, but you got just too many check marks you gotta have. You gotta have this, you gotta have that, but then this, that, and that, and it works with that card or whatever. And for a platform that has had a 3 to 4 year head start on this, that know its angle on where it goes with this, I feel like that the GFN 3080 tier, even though at this stage of the game it's still impressive in many ways, I feel like it's rushed because of the piecemeal way that it's out there. And it's too staggered. And it's likely due like that. I remember GFN talking about doing something else with its performance. Like they were supposed to get 4K in 2021. I mean, and they essentially got it upscale 4K via the AI. You know what I mean? But I'm on the NVIDIA Shield. Like, I don't think that's native. I could be wrong. But I thought there was a different methodology they were going to use. And I think that this may have come out early due to the concerns expressed by groups like Ampere. Again, this is not stuff that I'm making up. Go look up Ampere Group, GFN. Go read their press release or whatever you want to call it about the platform. And then there's another analyst group that said the same thing when they released their stats on the crossing the 12 million threshold. That the majority of these gamers that are users or whatever they call them, they're playing the free tier. And that GFN's limited business model, that could cause a problem with it, because it's not like you're going to the GFN store and you can buy a game or whatever. Like, the only way GFN gets paid is if you're part of a subscription. So maybe someone said, well, you know what? Maybe a good way to change that, because here's what Ampere Group said. Ampere Group said that they need to come up with more subscription tiers. They have to. And they said maybe what they can do is bundle subscription tiers with games. They came up with all these suggestions. And guess what? GFN did a lot of those suggestions. Remember, they, buy 3 months of the GFN Pro and get this game free or that game free. That's exactly what Ampere Group had said in their report. And maybe an extension of that is, hey, look, we got this alpha thing that we're working on. Maybe it's suppressive enough to where we can push it out there now. We'll just piecemeal implementation along the way. We think it's far enough now to where it may not have its full polish, but we can still market this now and put a significant price tag on it to help spur that, to add that extra growth, you know what I'm saying? And help spur that need to increase our subscriptions are active subscriptions. Now, why did I bring all that up? Because in regards to people being upset that GFN released next-gen features before Stadia came out with its 4K 120 or whatever, I kind of feel like GFN had to do this. Again, it feels a little rushed, feels a little piecemeal. I'm not saying that people don't love it. It's not a product that's working great for some people. But Stadia's core demographic is different. That's not going to jive with them. Stadia has no such issue when it comes to its business model. It has the most diverse business model in cloud gaming space to date. So they don't feel the need to rush to their next tier. It will release in completion when feasible. It won't be staggered. It's my take. Lastly, the media. I've heard conversations where people feel like Stadia has not done a good job to the media explaining what it is they're trying to accomplish. And that's why they're getting all this ire. I've said it over ad nauseum. I'm going to say it again. The only thing they wanted from Stadia was a better Game Pass. The better understanding what Stadia is doesn't help. They wanted a better Game Pass. That was opposite of that. Cloud gaming, it's just a way. It's just a solution looking for a problem. Again, rub elbows with those either thinking behind these articles or directly writing them. Content creators, podcasters. Again, people who have influenced me or have caught my eye. And I said, I really dig what you're saying in these regards, or I find it interesting. But before I roll with this, because this is coming from you, and you haven't really shown me where this is coming from, let's wrap a little bit. And I've used the means of conversation and getting acquainted with people at all levels. I've used that ability to get conversations and rub elbows with people and get their personal, intimate thoughts on these things. Because I had to be comfortable with what I was being told. There's a guy named well, I'll save that for another time. So that's where we're at, people. I don't think that Stadia did it all wrong. There were definitely things that they could have done better. When we look at the launch front, I think being upfront and honest about we're not a Game Pass. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, we feel like I get to where they've talked to Eurogamer and put all this out on the table. I get where they've talked to other entities and but when those entities didn't cascade this information as much as they should have, when it was like, we don't quite understand. Even though you told us a bunch of stuff, we don't understand. So we're just going to, we put it out there. We're not going to bring attention to it. I think Google had to realize, look, we're setting ourselves up for some serious problems if we don't get ahead of this thing and try to explain what we tried to tell them, but they're just not listening. Like, no, we're not looking to take away your PlayStation. No, we're not looking to take away your Xbox. But what we're looking to do is for people that have been separated from those experiences early on, we're looking to be a gap filler for them. We're really going to enjoy this product. And B, as capabilities increase, cloud gaming in general just becomes better. Those that may have not fit into that original category of those that were separated from hardware, those that are very much in love with hardware will start to see the growth and the improvement of cloud gaming in Stadia. They're going to say, you know what? This thing belongs in my gaming portfolio. This is a great way for me to interact with my favorite titles, and I'm hooked. Some of them, a number of them may feel that way right now. I think that would have been a more transparent. They still would have got attacked for the whole being a problem, a solution looking for a problem. They still would have got it hard, but I think that would have helped out a lot. I think another thing that would have helped out a lot is working on a communication with the AMAs. Saying that if we can hand deliver, no, that was too. That seemed like that you were out of your league. You don't do that. There's a better way to communicate. Look, we're working to get as many of these platforms pushed as soon as possible. You know what I'm saying? Like, they weren't prepared for that AMA. Did not go well. When you're dealing with a skeptical group, if you're gonna stick your neck out there like that, your neck better be coated in 24 karat gold. The whole beta thing, I get to where maybe that's not the language that they wanted to use because of the expectations from their partners and publishers. But again, I think getting in front of the lack of messaging from the media, even though they had everything that they needed, they could have got in front of that. As far as the games are concerned, they need to improve on that front. Definitely, they need to improve on the performance, and hopefully we'll see that. And I think we will see that. But when it comes to having every single multi-plat that's on an Xbox or a PlayStation, I understand that's not something that's going to happen overnight. You have to build relationships. That's going to happen. The Xbox didn't do that when it came out. They had to fight. New platforms have to fight, and it's going to be something that takes some time. Just continue to show and make growth. Getting beat to the punch. I think this is a little bit hyperbolic from a lot of people. Amazon is just simply taking stuff that Stadia is doing and putting it out in its retail product or not retail, but in its final product first. It'll come, but it's insignificant. It hasn't done anything for them. It'll come to Stadia when it's significant. Okay. And I don't blame Amazon for doing this. They got to do it because they got to start seeing more growth. Even though they're in beta and they've limited themselves, they want to be able to spring forward from some type of momentum. So these are momentum gainers for them. They need it. They need it more than GFN and more than Stadia because, again, GFN and Stadia at the top. When you look at GFN coming out with the next gen features, again, as wonderful as it may be for those that are on the other end of this mic using it, feels rushed, feels piecemeal. You know, parts of it are coming out every other month. That's probably in response to the things that Ampere Group has pointed out. They need to come out with more subscription models that are lucrative, that'll help balance the fact that most of the activity on the platform is free and they're not getting paid a dime. GFN doesn't have a robust business model like a Stadia. The only way they get paid is when somebody becomes a subscriber. They don't get in DLC, they don't get paid from the game, none of that stuff, okay? Stadia doesn't have that issue. So they don't need to sit there and say, before they feel that the 4K 120 is ready, they don't need to piecemeal it. Okay, well, you know, we're going to come up with a new classification, 4K 120 ready. You know, every game's not going to have it, but, you know, there's going to be some games. They don't need to do that. When it comes, Stadia is all about all or nothing right now. They piecemealed it at first, at the beginning. But now, when things are implemented, they're implemented pretty much across the board. And I think that's the best way to handle it. Makes it less confusing for the retailer and its core demographic. And when it comes to the media, I can't say this enough. The media is not innocent. It's not a misunderstanding. You know what I'm saying? The media only wants one thing from cloud gaming. And that's for it to be a subscription model for the games they want to play as a backup to their dedicated device solution. If you're trying to do anything other than that, you ain't gonna get no love. And it just happens to be that Stadia is the whipping post that they're going to use. They're not going to sit there and make it look like that they're against technology, but that's what it is. You get on behind the scenes, you're able to talk to them like how I have. Stadia and cloud gaming in general is a solution looking for a problem. So that's it from your boy. I appreciate all of y'all for coming through. How long have we been doing this? Golly. 3 hours and 18 minutes. All right. I got to go get something to eat because I ain't ate all day. But just felt like I wanted to catch base with a lot of you guys. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. And we'll get together soon. I'm going to probably do this again tomorrow night, but it's not going to be 3 hours. Trust me. I'm going to think of after I see what's happening on this week on Stadia, if it is released tomorrow, you guys will get a video Wednesday. I don't think my wife is going to be home before Wednesday, so I won't have time to prep for a SSC podcast. But I'm also working on something. I got to talk to the guys. We're also working on something. I'm working on something to where the show still continues without me. The show must go on. All right. So even if I can't make it, you guys aren't left with these large gaps of none this and none that. Okay. All right. With that said, I appreciate love all of y'all as always. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for the kind words and the concern. We getting Mrs. MM2K back in form. It's just going to take a little